Welcome, Counter Slammers. Jeremy here. Bringing you another model review. This time I'm going to be talking to you about Bradigus Thorle, the Runecarver. He's the new Circle Warlock that we're getting in Exigence. So first off, I'll go ahead and tell you just kind of the basic stats about him, from his card. He's kind of an average Warlock as far as his stats go. He's got Speed 5, which is actually a little on the slow side for Circle. He's got a Mat 6, a Rat 6, both pretty average. He's not super accurate, but he's also not terribly inaccurate. And then he's got Defense 14 and Armor 16. Again, those are pretty standard defensive stats for any Warlock, for a Circle Warlock too. He's got a command of only 8, so it's pretty bad. So any troops he brings aren't really going to be relying on him to make their command checks, but he's probably not going to be bringing a whole lot of troops because he is generally focused more on his battle group than anything else. He has 2 attacks, which are both essentially the same attack. One is called Stone Throw, and the other one is called Stone Strike. So see, he's got all of these rocks floating around him, and basically he either is throwing them at people or he's smacking them with them. Neither one of them is a magical weapon, which is really unusual for any Warlock or Warcaster, and can get him into trouble sometimes. The Stone Throw is a range 6 attack. It's rate of fire 3, which means that he can use it, of course, 3 times in a fight. And it's a power 13, which is actually pretty solid for any kind of Warcaster or Warlock weapon. His melee attack is the Stone Strike. It has reach. It is also a power and strength of 13. So he does pretty all right in the melee. Especially once he starts getting his synergy built up, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So, one more thing of note is that he has 17 hitboxes, which actually places him above the average as far as Circle Warlocks go. And I've actually found that this 17 hitboxes is pretty good. It makes him a lot more survivable than people would usually think. Especially coupled with some of the other abilities that he has, which I'll get to here in a second. So. On the back of his card, he's got a bunch of rules. The first one that I'm gonna hit on, I'm gonna actually do the weapon rules that he's got first because they're just a little simpler. He's got on both his ranged attack and his melee attack, and again, this is why they're basically the same attack. He has beatback, so every time he hits somebody, he can move them an inch, and then he himself can move an inch, which is pretty handy actually for him getting around. And then on his melee attack only, he has critical smite. So if he rolls a critical when he attacks with it, he can slam a model d6 inches, doing a POW 13 roll to them, and then just a POW 7 to everybody else because that's what his strength is. So then the other rules that he has, first one that he's got that is steady, which is really nice because despite the fact that he seems to be standing rather precariously on some rocks there, he just can't be knocked over. He also, now we get into some of the other ones that he's got. He has, is an ability called Earth Magic. So this affects, construct war beasts that he has in his battle group, and it says that whenever one of them uses its animus, it reduces the cost of that animus by 1. So this means that, say, a Wold Warden uses its animus, which creates a forest around it. Normally that would cost 2. When he uses it with him, it only costs 1. And the Wold Watcher, whose animus only costs 1, now is completely free, which is actually really cool, and makes his wolds more fury efficient and allows you to make use of their utility a little better. The next thing he's got is called Shape Stone. It's a star action that he can use. I have really never used this more than just 2 or 3 times. It is a little tricky to use because. Well, let me talk about what it does first. Getting ahead of myself. So what it does is he has to be base to base with one of his construct war beasts, and then he can essentially do a repair check and repair that war beast. He can't have the regular repair skill because that only affects warjacks, And because Construct War Beasts are constructs, he can't heal them with his normal use of Fury. So this is the only way he really has to fix up his constructs after they've taken a little bit of damage. Like a repair, like I said, he has to make a command check, which is where his command 8 comes into play, which is admittedly a little crappy, since he can potentially fail it. So, alright, so that's those 3 abilities. And then the last ability that he's got, which is the really important one, and this, along with the spell Synergy, are kind of what defines this caster. This last ability is called Stone Binder. It basically says that he is only allowed to take Construct War Beasts in his battle group. So that means that out of the whole staple of Circle War Beasts, he is only allowed to take the Wold Wrath, the Wold Warden, the Wold Guardian, the Wold Watcher, the Wold Weird, and Megalith. So that is a grand total of 6 War Beasts that he's allowed to take, because those are the only constructs we've got so far. So, now we get into like the meat of what makes this guy what he is, his spell list. So we're going to go ahead and hit the obvious one first, Synergy. Yes, he is a Warlock with Synergy. This is the very first time that this has ever happened. And it has been done kind of on him specifically because of the fact that Synergy in Hordes has generally been viewed as overpowered. Because of the fact that, you know, Fury works differently than Focus, of course. War Beast just generates its Fury basically out of nothingness and can generally have, a Heavy can generally have 4, whereas a War Jack needs to get its Focus from its Warcaster and can only hold 3 at a time. So that generally means that a War Beast with Synergy would do an absurd amount of work with those benefits. But it's allowed to be used on him because of the fact that he can only take constructs, and the circle constructs, they generally can have less. They generally have less Fury. The Wold Watcher is allowed 2. Megalith and the Wold Wrath are allowed 4, and every other War Beast is only allowed 3. So it doesn't really get out of hand quite as bad. And in addition to this, they tend to have lower hitting power than a lot of living War Beasts would, so it's kind of the balancing factor. And sorry, I think I forgot to describe what Synergy does. For anyone who doesn't already know, Synergy says that it affects his entire battle group, and it says every time one of the models in a model in this battle group hits an enemy model with a melee attack, the next model in the battle group that makes an attack gets +1 to hit and +1 to damage on all of its melee attacks. And this is cumulative. So you can have one guy attack, then the next guy gets +1/+1, then the next guy after that gets +2/+2, and so on and so forth. So basically, you want to have smaller guys attack things, build up that synergy chain, and then have a bigger guy go in and just wreck face as much as possible. So that's his big spell. What else has he got? He's got Rift, which is all around considered to be a very good spell by pretty much everyone. It's a range 8, cost 3, and 4-inch AoE with a power of 13, and it has a special effect that the 4-inch AoE stays in play for 1 round and is rough terrain. So this is pretty good. It does POW 7 blast damage. Of course, POW 13 on direct hits, and then a 4-inch rough terrain thing can really mess with some opponents pretty badly. What's really nice about it with him is that he can only take constructs, and that means, of course, that he can take Megalith and Wold Wardens, who have the Geomancy ability, which allows them to cast a spell that their caster knows, which costs 3 or less. And Rift, of course, costs 3, so that means that his Geomancers are capable of casting the spell for him and getting it out there and basically turning him into a bit of a casting powerhouse. Another spell that he's got that his Wold Wardens and Megalith will be able to cast is called Battering Ram. It has a cost of 2. It's only a range of 6. It's a power of 12. It's another offensive spell, and I believe that there's only maybe 1 or 2 other models in the whole game that have this spell so far. What it says is that when this spell hits an enemy model, that model is pushed 3 inches directly away from the source of the spell. So that means that if Bradigus casts the spell, either himself or channeling it through one of Circle's Gallows Groves, you get to push something away. If one of his War Beasts casts it, again, you get to push something away, and it can be helpful for zone control or getting things further away from you. And then the last spell that he's got, I think, is a new one. I don't know of any other model that has this. It's called Mystic Wards. It costs 3, and it is a range of self, and it affects his entire control area. And what it says is that any upkeeps and I believe continuous effects. I'm gonna double check that real quick because I don't like to give bad information. No, it's just animi and upkeep spells, not continuous effects. So any enemy animi or upkeep spells that are on his models in his battle group, so him or any of his war beasts, immediately expire, and then enemy models cannot cast spells, upkeep spells, or channel spells while they are within 5 inches of a model in his battle group. So that means that if you run one of your guys into melee with, say, a Krix Arc Node, and you cast that spell, that Krix caster won't be using that Arc Node. You get one of them close to the enemy caster, they won't be upkeeping any spells or casting them unless they move away or manage to kill it. So it's a powerful spell, but but I've discovered this as it's kind of niche, but when you can use it, it can really be game breaking. And lastly, we've got his feat. So his feat says, his feat is called Earthen Tide, and basically what it says is when he uses it, he chooses one table edge. So that can be the table edge where you started, your opponent's table edge, or one of the ones on the sides. And then he chooses a distance between 0 and 5 inches. And all of the models in his battle group are pushed. And it's important to remember that it's a push. They are all pushed in that direction, that distance, straight toward that table edge. Then, at the end of your turn, after all of your models have activated, you choose another distance between 0 and 5, and it can be different than the first, and then all of the models in his battle group are pushed again in the opposite direction that they were pushed the first time. So if you were to choose your opponent's table edge and 5 inches, all of your guys would slide up 5 inches, and then at the end of the turn, if you chose, say, your table, or at the end of the turn, they have to move toward your table edge. If you chose, say, 3 inches, they'd all slide backward another 3 inches. Again, like I said, it's important to note that this is a push, because some models can't be pushed, some, and they have to move straight toward things, and like if they're being pushed and they contact another model or an obstruction or something, they stop immediately. So there's some interesting things you can do, like if you want to move your guys just in one direction and not have them come back the other way, you can, first off, you can just choose to not have them, to just choose 0 in one of those directions and they won't move that way. But say you want some of the other guys to be able to move that way, you have to do some interesting things like pinning them in place by, say, putting a shifting stone behind one of them, and then when they try to slide back, they can't because the stone is there. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it. The most obvious application of it tends to be that if you use it forward toward your opponent's table edge, you basically get 5 extra inches of threat range on your wolves. They all just move up 5 inches, and then they get to activate and move themselves. So it's a great way to get the first strike on your opponent. And then, of course, sliding backward seems pretty obvious. You can try to get your guys out of range of your opponent. But I've also found that there's a whole lot of play in this spell, moving side to side. And I've used it to do things like move models into shifting stones to get them teleported the next turn, to move models into position, like to get around obstacles, to get at enemy models. I've used it to move things into zones to contest them or control them. And it's a really interesting feat that has a lot of different applications and is not necessarily obviously powerful, but if you play around with it, you can do some cool things. So it's basically like every other circle feat that we've got. Just in that way, that it's weird, but you can do some cool things with it if you know how to use it right. So I guess now I'll kind of like talk about some of his strong synergies and the play experience that I've kind of had with him so far. So obviously, since he has synergy and he has Mystic Wards, which are both battle group effects, he seems like a caster that definitely wants to have a large battle group. And you can play him that way. And a lot of people have been playing him that way and have met with varying degrees of success. A list I've seen a whole lot of is him with like 5 to as many as like 7 Wold Watchers, which are our little war beasts, our light war beasts. They cost 5 points. They have 2 melee attacks. They're only 2 Fury, and they're only mat 5, which means that when you start off the chain, the synergy chain with them, you kind of you kind of have to bank on good rolls sometimes because they're not super accurate. But once you start getting a chain going with them, you can really easily build up a large chain, and then at the end of it, you can have like a Wold Guardian or a Wold Warden or Megalith, and throw them in there, and they'll just crush something with like a plus, you know, as much as a +6 synergy bonus. A lot of people have been getting, and yeah. A Wold Warden is only power and strength 15, but when he gets +6 to hit and damage, he tends to wreck face. 17, so like a +6 on him would bring him up to a 23, and that'll kill most everything. I personally don't really care that much for that playstyle. In my experience with him, I've sort of come to the conclusion that, and let me preface this by saying, I don't own 6, you know, or 7 Wold Watchers, so the most I've ever played with was like 3 at a time, and you know, a couple of other heavies. So the highest I've ever gotten my synergy chain to go in a single game was a 4. But from what I've seen in my play experiences, I don't think that building him entirely for synergy is necessarily the way to go. And that's a bit of a controversial opinion, but it is my opinion that that synergy's a bit of a trap, and if you just go all in on it, that you're going to be wasting some of his potential, because there's a whole lot of things he can do, and he's actually, I think more than anything, he tends to be a very adaptable warcaster, just because of the fact that Wolds are more utilitarian in general than our other war beasts, so he can adapt to the situation as necessary. And I've found that I really don't ever need more than a +2 synergy bonus. I have never failed to kill the thing that I was after in one turn with a +2 synergy bonus. Now, granted, sometimes that requires help from outside models to do, but there you go. So another thing is Rift, and a lot of people have been talking about Rift because, of course, like I said, we have Geomancers, which are kind of a unique thing in Hordes. It's a model. It's a war beast. It's actually a unique thing just in the game, because there's only one other warjack / war beast in the game that can cast spells, and that is Deathjack. But his mechanic is different. He has to use focus and cast a spell for its first full cost, whereas Wold Wardens and Megalith just spend 1 Fury to do it. So it's actually, like, using Rift is actually, you know, through them and having a number of them on the field can actually be really powerful, especially since they're not actually terrible at building a synergy chain themselves. They start out at mat 6, they're POW 15, they can beat up on, you know, a lighter thing a little bit and build synergy for somebody else. They are a 9-point war beast. They are only defense 10 and armor 18, which sometimes makes them a bit of a liability, that there are a lot of points that's not that hard to kill. But then that's kind of offset by the fact that they do have a ton of hitboxes. They have 35, which can be difficult to chew through with shooting alone, especially with this caster. Not that he has an armor buff or anything, just because of the fact that he can only bring Wolds. They tend to be pretty defensive by nature, and it can be hard to just shoot them off the table. Now, that being said, Rift being the awesome spell that it is, and you being able to cast it as much as you want, I think that building entirely for Rift is also a trap. And the reason for this is, yes, Rift is amazing. Rift creates rough terrain. It does a bunch of damage. Some enemies will have infantry that does not care about POW 7 blast damage, even when it's boosted. I'm looking at Warders. Warders probably don't care about boosted POW 7 blast damage when they're armor 22. It's not a thing that's likely to affect them much. By that same token, some armies will not care at all about the rough terrain. I know a lot of people have mentioned that he's got really strong game against Retribution and the Protectorate of Menoth, because they both tend to struggle to bring a lot of ways to a lot of Pathfinder. But there are some things in both of those factions that can very easily deal with rough terrain, and if you run into one of them, then, you know, that can kind of ruin your day. So there's no, like, he doesn't hard counter a faction per se. He has good game against some factions, but he doesn't hard counter any entirely. And then there are some factions like Circle that really could care less about what Rift does as far as rough terrain. Scorn, Trolls, they tend to have good ways to get around it. You know, every faction's got some way to deal with it. So building for that plan entirely and hoping that you can just completely stop your enemy in his tracks because he has no rough terrain is not always the best approach, because sometimes you'll run against people who do, and he'll kind of fall down if that's your entire plan. The last 2 spells, I have found them, in my personal experience, to be very situational. So like I said, Mystic Wards, it can be very powerful. It can really shut down casting hard. I've actually used it with the Wold Weird, which a lot of people don't like to take with him because it doesn't have any melee attacks, and its Animus kind of overlaps with Mystic Wards. But I actually really like the overlap it has with Mystic Wards, because if you run a Wold Weird within 5 inches of their caster, and then he uses his own Animus, his Animus says that while within 10 inches of him, enemy models have to pay double Focus or Fury to cast or upkeep their spells. And then you, of course, cast Mystic Ward, and then while within 5 inches of him, they just can't cast any spells or upkeep them. And this really is a headache for your opponent, because if your opponent wants to cast a spell, a lot of time, while they're within 5 inches of something you've got, they can a lot of times move that far to get away from it, because 5 inches is really not that hard to achieve. But if there's another 5 inches on top of that, where it's going to still cost them double, that creates a headache, and they will generally waste the entire turn trying to kill that one model. And yes, they'll probably do it, but that one little dude will sacrifice his life that turn, and hopefully buy you the time you need to make an awesome play and win that, and get up on the game and win it. And don't knock it till you try it. It works better than you'd think. And then Battering Ram, like I said, it's range 6. That's kind of the limiting factor on it, is just that it's short range. If it were like a range 8 or 10 spell, I'd use it so much more often. But at range 6, I find that I tend to use Rift a lot more often, since it's 1 higher power and it's 2 more range, and it's an AoE. So I have used it sometimes to push things out of zones and contest them. And on that note, that I think is the thing that this caster is really amazing at. He is a scenario caster to his core, I feel. He's got the rough terrain, he's got the Battering Ram, he has wolds, there's beatbacks and knockdowns in there with the things that he can do. He has crit smite, Wold Wardens have combo smite. There's lots of stuff that he can do to move enemies away or slow them down on their way in. And with synergy, he and his army can actually be pretty capable of killing a lot of things. And what I've found works best in my games is when I go in, if I just focus really hard on the scenario and, my opponent puts things into that zone, if all I focus on, or not all I focus on, but if my main focus is killing or moving out of the zone everything that's in it and then trying to slow down anything else that's coming in, I can usually get up pretty well on attrition, and my opponent will then have to respond by trying to put more things into that zone, which I can then continue to kill. And I basically try to distract my opponent with the scenario instead of him trying to just kill my stuff. And I think that's where he excels. And I think that he does it real well because he has these tools, because Synergy is like a power bonus, and then Rift is a control thing, and so is Mystic Wards, and they all kind of work together to make him this really utilitarian scenario guy. And then, I don't know, as far as models go, like I said, Wold Wardens are great. Some people have said that Megalith doesn't really do enough for the 11 points that he costs, and it's generally better to bring a Wold Warden. I personally disagree, but I can see their point. I have found that in a whole lot of situations that the weight of stone is worth its weight in gold. And that his Animus, when it costs only 1, is just kind of absurd. And for those of you who don't know, his Animus lowers the defense of all enemies within 5 inches of him by 2, and makes enemies treat all the space within 5 inches of him as rough terrain. Like I said, against people who don't have a lot of Pathfinder, that can be really strong. But it's also great for starting up a synergy chain or supporting other models who are going in on things that might have high defense. And he can still cast spells himself. And with that 4 Fury, he can really get a lot of work done. I've had him go in on turns before, charge in, wreck up something that's already weakened, or just mess it up a little bit to get ready for someone else to kill, drop his Animus, and then cast a spell. And then sometimes he still even has 1 Fury left to spare after all that's said and done. So that's it's pretty good. And that weight of stone, that -3 speed, when you can push stuff away from you, and move your own models around, it's really powerful. You know, dropping a and it also prevents charges. You know, dropping the speed of like a Titan or a Khador Warjack to 1 is kind of absurd. The Wold Guardian has a lot of game with him, I find. He's you know, POW 17 is really nice. The Animus, Flesh of Clay, where he takes 1 less damage die from range attacks, is also amazing. Basically, that guy is nigh impossible to shoot off the table at armor 20, taking 1 less damage die from range attacks. And granting that Animus to Bradigus is also really good. Of course, the Wold Watcher is really good. I don't think I've put together a list really that doesn't have a Wold Watcher. I usually bring at least 1 all the time. A lot of times I'll bring 2, but I think at least 1 is really nice. The Shield Guard is good. The extra forests that he generates when he kills stuff is also nice for Bradigus. You know, because more ways to slow things down, obstruct line of sight. Again, he's a great way to build synergy. And then the Wold Weird. Now, he doesn't have any melee attacks, like I said, but he's still actually really good. Just his rate of fire 3 gun does a lot of work at clearing infantry, which is a thing that Bradigus can struggle with if he just builds entirely for his battle group. And if you really need him to, he can still contribute to a synergy chain. He can push. Throw 1 Fury on him, he gets an auto-hitting melee attack and tries to push somebody. A lot of times it won't do anything, but it still hits and adds 1 to the synergy chain. He's also really different than most Wolds in that he is speed 7, and he is defense 13, which means that sometimes people are going to miss him and be surprised by the fact that they will miss him. And that speed 7 will allow him to get to lots of places to get good shots off, or to get into position to push people pretty easily. And then the Wold Wrath, kind of the elephant in the room, as it were. I find in the games that I've played with him that he does more for the Wold Wrath than it does for him. At a +2 synergy bonus, the Wold Wrath will murder everything. At Mat 8, it does not need to boost to hit things initially, so that it can land its knockdown, which saves it a Fury, which essentially buys it an extra attack at power 21. And when the Wold Wrath makes 6 full attacks against something at power 21, that thing dies. But like I said, it does more, or he does more for it than it does for him. It takes up a lot of space in his lists, and you lose out on potential infantry options and more models for the battle group. And I'm still kind of working out how and if I would want to play that more seriously. All right, moving on, because I know I'm taking a while. Infantry. Kind of the last big thing I want to talk about here. He is a battle group caster. He really loves his battle group. Lots of people will just want to build him entirely battle group. I think that's a mistake. I played him that way. I don't like it. He struggles really hard to clear the amount of infantry that he needs to because he doesn't have reach. And I know some people say that Blackclads and their Hunter's Mark is essentially reach because it gives them 2 extra inches on a charge, but it's not at all the same, because they can't reach out and kill a swath of infantry around them, and that's a big deal. Bringing his own infantry is really good. Skinwalkers, a lot of people have talked about Skinwalkers and great success with that. I personally haven't tried them. What I've played a lot of is Ravagers and Druids, and a little bit of Wolves of Orboros. The Wolves of Orboros is just sort of like, it's a general screen unit. If you run across somebody who can clear out single wound infantry really fast, they will die immediately and be useless. If you run across somebody who can't necessarily, they'll tie up your opponent for a turn or 2 and kind of clear out another tar pit unit while, you know, in the process. It can work, and they're cheap. Ravagers are actually really amazing with him. He provides no support at all for them, so against some opponents they will evaporate. But when they against opponents that don't have the ability to remove 7 to 8 Ravagers, which are still 8 wound models, even with their low armor, in a single turn, they will get a lot of work done. And they can often be the Alpha Strike, so he doesn't have to use his feet to get the Alpha Strike, and he can use it later on for other purposes. Druids do a similar thing. They will clear out single wound infantry, they will block line of sight to his battle group, basically allow him to make the Alpha Strike or absorb an Alpha Strike without having to use his feet to do it, and then he can use that for gains later on. Druids are actually really amazing with Mystic Wards, because you'll spend the beginning part of the game protecting all of your stuff from spells, and then at the later part of the game, you'll just prevent them from casting spells at all. And people don't like when they can't cast any of their spells on your stuff. So there's all that. I've kind of brought it up already, but Blackclad Wayfarers are really amazing with him because they can grant his wolds a free charge and 2 extra inches when they go. This is actually really important to him because he tends to use his stones to control Fury because he has a lot of War Beast with him, and wolds can't frenzy. So whenever there's any Fury left on them, it just stays there and makes them less effective. So you want to get rid of all of it, so you want to use stones to do that. You also want to keep stones in position to heal the wolds because it's really difficult to heal them otherwise. But Blackclads are really great with him, and I basically always take 2. Because the free charge is really handy, and I use it occasionally, but what's even more important is their sprays. Blackclad sprays are still amazing. They clear infantry really well. It's a thing Bradigus needs. Enough said. And on that line of thinking, Una the Falconer, also really good for him. He can't bring anything but Construct War Beasts. Unless he brings Una. And then he gets access to 3 more War Beasts. One of which he'll like a lot most of the time. Another of which can potentially have some utility when used with the Woldwrath. And the last of which he doesn't really care that much about. The Rotterhorn is the one that he's really going to want. Because it can use its Animus on Blackclad Wayfarers. And give them the acceleration. So the way they can move up, cast either a Hunter's Mark or a Spray, and then end their action, and then teleport back to safety, and then do it again the next turn. With Una and 2 Blackclads, you can clear more infantry than your opponent really tends to expect that you can. You can put solid dents into multi-wound infantry this way. You can clear out single-wound infantry like it's nobody's business. And then later in the game, and I stress later, because committing Una and her Rotterhorn early will get one or both of them killed and make you sad. But later in the game, after a lot of the threats to Una are kind of dealt with already, she can move in and contribute more toward the removal of support and infantry that's gumming you up with her ranged attacks. She gets 3, and they ignore the melee penalty, which is really good. And then the Rotterhorn, of course, can like charge in and use its star action to do POW 8s to everything around it. Another great way to get rid of support models or infantry, especially when they have high defense and are kind of tricky to get rid of otherwise. So it's a combination that I really love. It does cost 6 points, and I've put it in about half the lists that I've been playing with, and I've played with several. I really like it. When it's not there, I feel it, but I also don't think it's necessary. And let's see, aside from that, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on this guy. I think that he is a really great addition to the Circle lineup. I don't think that he's likely to become one of our top power casters anytime soon, and I think that's mostly because of the fact that he's just tricky to play, and it's just kind of hard to come up with the one playstyle for him that makes him a powerhouse. But he is very utilitarian. I think he would complement most of our casters pretty well in a 2-list format. He's a great choice for a 3-list format. And, you know, I hope that everyone at some point will get out there and give him a try, because I definitely think he's worth it. And other than that, I will see you all next time.